Good evening, and welcome to ParentChild Plus's Putting Care Front and Center. I'm Sarah Walzer, CEO of ParentChild Plus, a national nonprofit organization that works with families and caregivers to prepare their children for school success. Those pictures you just saw show the journey we have been on with families over the past 18 months, from in-home visits to virtual visits to joyous graduations in homes, on sidewalks, and in parks. Throughout it all, no matter what, the incredible ParentChild Plus staff, some of whom you will meet tonight, remained committed to building equal possibilities from the start for all families. ParentChild Plus, led by community-based home visiting staff, many of whom were parent participants, is an intimate, culturally and linguistically rich model centered on supporting parents in their role as their children's first and most important teachers. We have worked with hundreds of thousands of families with young children over the past 50 years in communities that too often have little or no quality early childhood programming. Today, we are proud to support families across 142 locally run program sites in the U.S. in over 40 languages. This evening, we are honoring the work of our home visiting staff, who are primarily, but not all, women. They are on the front lines, providing essential care to young families in the communities hit hardest over the past year, from the rise in racist attacks to the health and economic impacts of COVID-19 that have left too many without income, food, housing security, without a sense of safety, security, or hope. We will bring you frontline stories from these phenomenal women, share critical conversations on how investing in family care and early education is vital to unlocking pathways for women and families, and conclude with an inspiring performance. As our country begins to return to some form of normal, for ParentChild Plus families and the work that we do together, too much will not change. Families will still be confronting low wages and limited access to quality education, and many of these situations will be exacerbated for children by this past year of isolation, trauma, and loss. Now, more than ever, we need to support parents in giving their children the skills to succeed. It's time that we put care front and center. A quick reminder that the external speakers participating in the event tonight play no part in fundraising for our program. As today's discussion gets going, we hope you will join the conversation by tweeting or sharing stories on social media using the hashtag ParentChildPlus. Now, I am so honored and grateful to go right to our first panel, featuring some amazing ParentChild Plus home visiting staff who will be sharing their experiences supporting families on the front lines during the past year. I am delighted to introduce Alicia Haradasani Gupta, who will be leading this conversation. Alicia is a gender reporter for the New York Times, covering politics, business, technology, health, and culture through the gender lens. She also writes the New York Times in her words newsletter. Thank you, Alicia, for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Sarah, for having me, and ParentChild Plus for having me here. I'm truly honored to be hosting this, what I hope will be a powerful conversation, because if it's obvious now to anyone that we're living through a childcare crisis. At the height of the pandemic, childcare providers shut down or were forced to reduce their capacity, leaving many parents to their own devices, but also leaving many caregivers stretched thin. Already before the pandemic, childcare work was one of the lowest paying jobs in the country, and many caregivers, a majority of whom are women and women of color, were living in poverty. And yet we saw how much of our economy was built on the backs of their hard labor. And now, as we emerge from the shadows of the last year, caregivers are trying to do the impossible, which is open their doors again, return to some kind of normal. And that is not an easy task. No one knows that better than the wonderful ladies of ParentChild Plus that I have the pleasure of speaking with today. We have with us T. Nguyen from California. We have Daisy Pena from New York. We have Neris Centeno from North Carolina. And we have Loida Guzman from Pennsylvania. Hi, ladies. Good evening.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
Hello. It's so nice to see you.
Good evening, everyone. Yes.
I want to go around and just have each one of you introduce yourselves. Can we start with T?
Yes, so my name is Tina Nguyen. I am the early learning specialist based in Santa Clara County in California.
Great. Daisy?
I'm as well a learning specialist in Queens, New York, and I service the Astoria area.
Okay. Loida?
Hi, I'm one of the site coordinators in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Great. And sorry,
Neris.
Neris. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. And I am an early learning specialist in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thanks for joining me today. I know that the last year has been really disrupting for childcare, for the childcare sector, obviously because of the pandemic. You know, it's kind of, you know, if people don't know it now, they're kind of living under a rock. So I wanted to ask you how you can you hear me? Is everything okay?
Yes.
Okay. How you managed to sort of pivot your services. I know that there was a lot of change that you had to incorporate. So T, let's start with you. How did you change the services that you provide to your families?
So first of all, due to the pandemic, we actually went virtual for all our visits. So I had to switch over to FaceTiming my families for the 30 minutes twice a week. But on top of that, the thing that really changed was that we actually had to kind of be like the food delivery services for them. So I had one family who needed milk for their three children, and the family didn't feel comfortable going out to get milk due to the pandemic. On top of that, mom had to stay home to take care of three children. So it was only dad going out getting groceries, but there was a limit on how much milk they can get. So they asked me for a favor to pick up the milk for them and drop it off while I drop off the visms, the books and toys for the children. We also started to do a lot more food distribution through Second Harvest. And again, some of these families still don't feel comfortable going out during the pandemic. So what I do is, as I volunteer at the food distribution, I would pick up a box for them and drop it off as well. We also do diaper distribution, and same thing. I would pick up the diapers for the families, to drop it off during my Vism drop-offs.
So this is like well beyond your normal responsibilities. You sort of had to sort of stretch yourself to do all these other things. Do you yourself have children or you know, family members that you're looking after at home?
I actually don't. I'm not married.
Okay.
I don't have kids, so my schedule is pretty flexible.
Okay. Daisy, I want to turn to you. I think I also saw in a video, in another video, that you had to pivot quite a lot.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle, but it didn't amount to what other families were going to, so I did it. I have two boys at home. It was a little difficult because I had to drop them off, and then I would do as well. We did diapers, we did wipes, we had food from the pantry, and I have to say, we were very fortunate to have fundings to help some families with gift cards to cover groceries or any bills that needed to be paid during the pandemic.
Yeah,
and it was very difficult because of the virtual visits. It's not easy, especially when you have two little ones running in the background and one actually trying to do schooling. So it was fun though.
Yeah. So you mentioned you dropped your kids off somewhere. Where did you leave them?
I would have to leave them at my mom's, and it was a lot of back and forth because I lived in the Bronx, and then I had to go to Queens to drop them off, and then I would go to the office, load up my car, and be like a delivery service to all my families.
I think that's such an important point, you know, like the collapse of the care system is a problem that multiple generations have to deal with. So, you know, it's not just you and your kids, it's your mom who suddenly has to look after your kids while you're looking after everyone else's kids. You know, it's sort of the ripple effects are so far reaching. Loida, I want to come to you and ask you how you changed, your services and what you were doing during the pandemic.
So in my case, I'm one of the coordinators, and some of my staff do have little ones that they would have to drag around in order to provide the services. So although were the ones doing the actual visits, I became that delivery person. I became the person who was like packing and taking, packages to other families. In addition of that, we were fortunate also to get grants. Our supervisors were great into being able to apply for additional grants. So we were able to provide some of the families, again, with funding that will cover rent assistance or bills or anything like that, because sadly, some of our families do not qualify for the fundings that were being made available to a lot of the other families due to status or different reasons. So we were that lifesaver. We were the ones that were able to give them a gift card, a money order, or even reach out to landlords and things like that. So we were the ones that were holding their hands through the whole.
Yeah. And Naris, I wanna hear your story.
Yes. So I think everything that everyone else mentioned, we have been doing as well. We went virtual since March around March 14. And the first thing was identify the needs of the families. What they needed to be able to make these Zoom calls possible. So we started by providing them with computers, making sure they had the internet connection, and also teaching them how to do the Zoom calls, because this was something new. So we were really trying to figure this out, and so we learn new ways to do it, and then we teach the families how to make the Zoom calls, because at the beginning everything was a chaos. Everyone was running around trying to make the Zoom calls with cell phones. It was not easy because they were trying to do this and trying to focus the child, or so we did like pre-visit videos where we record ourselves, and teaching them how they were supposed to put the computer or their cell phones, and doing the activities. So they were aware of what we were expecting, the materials they needed, and everything else that you mentioned, like delivering the business, delivering food, connecting them with a lot of resources. That was one of the big things, because a lot of families were, before the pandemic, as you know, isolated. So they were like in a bubble, didn't know about much in the community. So I personally look for resources and try to connect them a lot. Like, I know a lot of people didn't drive, so they couldn't go to places and get these resources, but at least we were connecting with them and getting these resources to them. So yes, and also it was a lot of stress in the families, because everyone. I have a child at home too, so I understand, and I understood their situation. So it was very important to listen to their concerns. And yes, we're using an app from the CDC called Milestones, following their development, and we encourage the families to use it every month to follow their child development. So they will learn about everything, follow their every milestone that they were achieving. So this gave us the like a tool for them to understand their behaviors in this stressful time, so they could know how to react instead, not react, but not react, but to understand and help them.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
I think all of you have described really hard work, really time consuming and energy consuming work. I wonder what keeps you going, or what motivates you, especially in this incredibly tough time, leaving your kids with your mom or leaving your kids at home, and sort of going out there in a dangerous situation. T, let's start with you. What was the thing that kept you going?
I think what kept me going is just knowing that I'm making an impact in these families' lives, especially knowing that they had all these challenges and hardships, and just one small, simple act of kindness, just by picking up milk for them and dropping it off, has made a big impact for their family. That keeps me going because I know that I'm able to help them one way or another. Same thing with the food and diaper distribution, because during the pandemic, we didn't know what to expect. The toilet rolls were all going out, the wipes were going out, everyone was basically panicking. So for us to take this road and just go out there and do this for them, pick up the stuff for them, I think they are very grateful. So that's what makes me want to keep helping them. Even after pandemic, if they still need my help with food or diaper distribution, I'm more than happy to help them.
Daisy?
What really motivates me is just a simple thank you that our families have constantly said, and knowing that, like Tiny said, I was like, who doesn't want to do something that can easily put a smile on somebody's face and they can just say thank you? I think that those little things impacted these families so much. It brought a joy to know that I did something and it was selfless, and I would do it again and again for these families because they appreciated it the most.
Yeah. Naris?
Their smiles and every visit kept me motivated. As Ty and Daisy said, because I know I am doing a big impact. As I know that they will have a better future because of the little things that we are doing.
Yeah, I mean, developmentally as well. This year, created big divides in terms of education, in terms of learning for kids from lower income backgrounds, because they didn't have access to internet. They couldn't stay in touch with their teachers. So I think it's what you were doing. Keeping those kids engaged is so important. Loida, what keeps you going?
I think everyone said, T, Daisy, and I has said it, but I think it was that. I think it was that simple thank you and smile in the family's face. I think nothing more humble than that. It didn't matter what we brought into their hands. It didn't really matter. It was a pack of diapers, a box of wipes, whatever it was, they were appreciative. So I think that gives you that motivation of keep on going. And it didn't matter where we had to go, what we had to pick up, or how to handle it, because they were appreciative of every little thing that we were handing into their hands. So I think they said it well, but I think just a smile and a thank you, I think, goes a very long way, especially during these times.
Of course. Yeah. So around the country, everyone is trying to figure out how to return to normal, whatever that looks like. And, I think this is going to take a little bit of time. But I want to hear from you what you're hearing from families. Are they going to go back to work tomorrow? What is their childcare going to look like in the future? Are you going to keep doing these virtual sessions with them? Do they prefer this? T, let's start with you.
I actually had some families asking when I can visit them in person again. And I told them personally, even though I'm vaccinated, but personally, I still don't feel comfortable and safe for them and their family. So I told them that if it works, the virtual calls, if it works, why not continue? Because we've been doing so well for the past year and a half. So, and they're almost done with the program anyways. So I mainly encourage them to stay virtual if necessary, just to be safe, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Just like the pandemic, we didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
And then I have other families who do actually prefer virtual and don't want to leave their bubbles.
And are these families sort of, were their employment disrupted in the last year, and are they still looking for work, or are they back at work?
They're back at work now.
Okay. Daisy, what about you?
Unfortunately, a lot of my families have not been able to go back to work. I deal with a lot of families that are doubled up in the home. So like T said, I wouldn't be comfortable going into the home because I'm a carrier. I'm going from a house to a house, and I don't want to, be the cause of anything. And already the parents are struggling with work and childcare. The last thing I need to do is bring anything into the home, really interrupting that.
Yeah. So do you think that, as they're struggling to look for work, is this program sort of helping them, here, have my kids for an hour while I look for work, or do you think it's going to be a while before they can get back out there?
I think these parents are strong. They have conquered mountains during this time, and I think they are going to get there just at their pace. There's some families that they said that they're going to take it on as soon as everything opens because they don't have any other choice, really. So I hope they do.
Yeah. And Nerith, what about you? What are you hearing from your families?
Most of our families are preferring virtual. I think it has been working so well that they got used to it now, the flexibility that we have. And yes, they're feeling a lot of very comfortable with virtual visits. Just a few will prefer in person, but most of our families are preferring in virtual. And let me tell you that we just finished our first year, and so the majority of our families already graduated in May. So these families, these kids are getting ready for preschool now, this coming year. So they will be in person. But the new families that we are recruiting right now, they prefer virtual. Yes,
that's so interesting. Do these families are they also looking for work or continuing to work, or what's their employment situation?
During the pandemic, a lot of families lose their jobs. Yes, it was a lot of struggle because almost everything was closed, but now I think the majority of our families are working. They have steady jobs, right now.
That's so interesting that your family still prefer virtual. And Loida, have you heard anything?
So there's a pretty mix. So in my case, most of my parents, typically the mom is a stay-home mom, and that is the one that goes to work. So that was the one who lost the job during the pandemic, and I would say a lot of them have been back. I don't have a percentage of who has been back, but most of my families currently started virtual. I'm on the same way. Most of our families graduated in April. So most of our families started right after, and they have been virtual since. So they don't know what a in-person visit is.
Yeah.
So they really not asking for it because they don't know what it is like, and we're still trying to get settled and figure out what would it be. My guess is that probably when school starts and the older siblings or cousins who live in the home start going into in person, they might open
Yeah.
their doors again, but it hasn't been a request, nor so we haven't asked either, because we don't even know. I
Yeah.
don't know that the earlier specialists feel safe and comfortable going into homes. Like Daisy said, we go from home to home. So the last thing we want to do is to carry from one home into the other, which was something that we were discussing earlier in one of our meetings. It's like, so we are trying to get back to whatever our new norm will be, but we haven't figured out what would that be. But for the families, most of them, all they know is virtual, and they have enjoyed it. They have adapted pretty quickly, which I'm very happy and surprised, because it's the first time we do it from the beginning. We started, I believe it was the end of April when we started. We ended a group and we started another one, and it has worked so well. So I guess we will see what the fall will bring. But as of right now, they are happy with, what they're getting, and they enjoy. I think for us, it was easier to get the mom involved. I think for our experience, when we were doing on-site visits, in the beginning, it took longer for the parent to get engaged, right? Because, they got a million other things to do.
Right.
But in this case, because it's virtual, they have no other way. They have to be there. They have to get involved so that they can get the visit going. So something that we learned from the virtual world is that it wasn't as bad as we thought, because parents got very engaged into it and they enjoy. We did activities in the past, but with the pandemic, we added additional activities because we want them to be super busy. So all that extra that we are giving them is really helping with the virtual visit. So as of right now, it's going well. They enjoying it. So nobody's pushing. They do ask when we will do it, but not necessarily because they waiting on it. They just ask to see.
Yeah. So we have less than 10 minutes, and I want to close out with, there's, for the first time in 50 years, there's a real possibility that the childcare system will change. The White House is looking at it, Congress is looking at it, businesses are looking at it. It's a real moment of transformation. I want to hear from you what, like, one thing that you hope to see as part of that change, and what keeps you sort of hopeful for the future. T, let's start with you.
I really think ParentChild Plus is a great program that will make families and parents realize that they are their children's first teacher. And for me, I used to be a preschool teacher, and I've witnessed and experienced parents putting the responsibility of teaching their children on me, on the teachers. Whereas now with the ParentChild Plus program, especially going virtual, I believe these families have realized that they are the teachers. They can teach their children as long as given the materials. So I feel like if whatever happens to childcare in the future, I feel like we should continue to educate the families, to support them, and to really guide them, so that way they themselves can be the teacher at home.
Daisy, what about you?
I would love to see more power given to the parent and away from the teachers as well. It's wonderful to see how capable and how these parents have flourished from not knowing a little thing in the home can be something, unbelievably elaborate to these kids. A box? Who would ever think a box can teach a kid about something? And a box is an instrument, it's a building block, it's a storyteller. It's so much, and it would be great to see parents know that school it's not where it starts. It starts at home. And to give the parent knowledge and power, it's amazing how much our parents have learned about themselves, about their children, and being home can be a great experience with your kids. You don't have to take them to a park or a museum, but home is where it's at, and they've learned that home teaches everything.
Yeah. And Neris?
Yes, I think getting parents involved in their child's education is vital, como decimos in Spanish, vital. Yes, we need to continue. We need to continue because parents need this. They need to be educated and understand that their involvement will make a big change. Yes, and I would like to see that. I would like to see that continue. And also, there is something very important that we need to talk about with Congress, that these families that are being isolated because of the legal status, yeah, we need to bring that too, because some parents, they it's not just about the child. We are helping the parents too, because maybe the child will grow and find a job and do something in life, but parents need to go out too and find a future. And that's what we are doing in ParentChild Plus too. We are giving these parents the tools that they need to find a better job, to find opportunities. And the first thing is, for these parents that are not legal status, they need to have that.
Right.
Because of that, they will have a better future, a better job, a license to be able to drive and go places. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. I mean, looking after kids is not just an educational thing. It's economic, it's political, it's social, it's cultural. There's so many things involved in that. Loida, I want to hear from you what you hope, how the system might change, or any policies that you hope will be enacted soon.
So I think for me, it would be that we would equip our staff in childcare to be able to empower our parents. I don't think in childcare, that's my background, we empower our parents. So I think that's something that we need to train staff. We need to train staff to get parents more engaged. I know some of the early childhood programs do involve parents, but I don't think we involve parents as much. So if we get parents more involved, we definitely will be able to equip the children more and empower the parents, right? Because ultimately they will be the ones being those children's advocates in the future. So I think we need to start there. We start with the early childhood staff to know that empowering the parent would equip the child. So it's kind of like a trigger effect, like you said in the beginning. So if we give, the equipment to one, and it would kind of like trigger down. So I think my hope is that we would have staff in early childhood that will empower the parents to get more engaged into their children's life, because at the end, the children will be the benefit, and that's what we want.
Right. And of course, having to empower parents also involves, parents being able to give that time to their kids. So it includes being able to take leave from their jobs. It's being able to afford, to not work at certain days or right after maternity. There are all these different factors involved. And I'm going to wrap here. I really appreciate all four of you joining me today and sharing your stories and sharing, such inspiring work that you do with us. And thank you to the audience for joining us today and spending your Tuesday evening with me. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia, Daisy, Loida, Neres, and T for that powerful conversation. It's been quite a year, and these women made it happen for the families that they were supporting. Audience, we hope that you learned a little more about ParentChild Plus from those facts. If there's anything that we've learned during this pandemic, and our panel just demonstrated it so clearly, it's the critical role of the caring workforce and the critical role that women play in that workforce. Long before the pandemic, women disproportionately shouldered the burdens of caregiving. They watched after our elderly relatives, cared for our children, and worked in our hospitals. Before and throughout the pandemic, women have been holding us together, working long hours, doing double, triple shifts to support the well-being of families and communities. The home visiting workforce, the women you just met, sit right at the heart of so many of the issues around women in the workforce. Their primacy in caregiving roles, how we compensate caregivers, and what we as a country are doing to enable them to keep doing and expanding this critical work supporting families, including their own. By investing in the potential and power of women, we will see healthier children, stronger families, and thriving communities. As we focus this evening on putting caregivers front and center and investing in the support systems that give them, their families, and their communities equal possibilities from the start, we are honored to have this opportunity to talk about what we can and should be doing as a country with an amazing guest. Jennifer Klein is co-chair of the White House's new Gender Policy Council, but she is in no way new to these critical issues. Prior to the Gender Policy Council, Jen worked as a special assistant to the President for Domestic Policy in the Clinton White House, as a deputy in the Office of Global Women's Issues in the State Department in the Obama administration, and most recently, as Chief Strategy and Policy Officer for Time's Up. She has focused on issues of gender equality and women in the workforce for her entire career. And it was my great pleasure to get to talk with her earlier about supporting women and families as we emerge from the pandemic. Welcome, Jen. Can you tell us a bit about the White House Gender Policy Council, why it was created, and what your focus is as you launch?
I'd be happy to. Thanks so much for having me. The Gender Policy Council actually follows a number of other women and girls offices that have actually existed before in the White House. So in that sense, it's not new. There was, in fact, an Office of Women's Initiatives in the Clinton administration. I worked in the First Lady's office in the Clinton administration, and we sort of thought of ourselves as an adjunct working on a whole host of issues, which many people termed women's issues or gender issues. Fast forward a bit, although there have been similar offices in Republican administrations as well. But the most recent example was in the Obama administration, there was a White House Council on Women and Girls. And I worked actually really closely with Valerie Jarrett and Tina Chen, who led that office, to think about what worked and what might be different. So I would say there's sort of a couple of distinguishing factors. The first is, as you will note, it's not called a White House Council on Women and Girls, it's called a Gender Policy Council. And the reason for that is, while we are very much focused on women and girls and keep a laser focus on that, because in many places in the world, including here, there is discrimination simply because somebody is born a girl. And we don't want to lose that focus. On the other hand, it is a signal and a statement of the work we are doing to include gender more broadly. The second word that appears in our council's title, which was different, is policy. So, you know, the council's the previous councils had been much more focused on outreach. Not that they didn't do policy work, but they were much more focused on outside stakeholders. We do a lot of meeting and learning from and sharing our work with outside stakeholders of all kinds, whether that's advocacy groups and nonprofits, the philanthropy, the private sector, state, local, and tribal governments. But at base, that's in service of the work we do on policy. So similar to the National Economic Council or the Domestic Policy Council or the National Security Council, we're focused on a range of issues, which, as I said, some people still call women's issues. I don't, because they are core issues, and I know we're going to talk more about that, but you know, they're core economic issues or health issues. But that's the explanation for the change to the word policy. And then the only other thing I would note, which is really important, was really important to me in thinking about the genesis of this council, was that the work is both global and domestic. These are issues which literally cross borders. They don't stop at the border. So whether you're thinking about an issue like women's health or economic security or immigration, those are issues where there are implications, both globally and domestically. And while there are differences, and obviously the work is tailored to where you are doing it, there's more similarities, I think we've learned in the last 4 years than we might have even seen when it comes to thinking about women's rights and opportunities.
Thank you. That was great. And you honed in immediately on one of the key issues that we wanted to talk about today, which is the economic issues surrounding women's work, as it's often been defined in this country. And I think what we've seen definitely is that the pandemic has really exacerbated and spotlighted the huge economic barriers that so many women face, particularly women of color, particularly immigrant women, and the consequences that those barriers have for them, for our economy. And these are the women who work for ParentChild Plus, and they're the mothers who participate in the program. So not only with your gender policy council lens, but the work you've done for your entire career, where do we go from here? What do we focus on to try to change some of these circumstances?
Yeah, you said that so well. I mean, I walk around saying we started with a health crisis, then there was an economic crisis, and then there was a caregiving crisis. And by the way, I think there's, the other thing that that people have really started to recognize is this, not so much the issue of ParentChild Plus, but a real shadow pandemic of gender-based violence, which again, all of these things existed. All of these things were challenges for women, particularly women of color, as you just pointed out, for decades, for generations, probably. And what is new is only that they've gotten worse. And maybe in a way that has some positive benefit going forward, a little bit more visibility. So what was really hidden and seen in many cases as a private responsibility, if you take the example of caregiving, now you can't look away, right? We see the consequences of the lack of public policies to support caregivers, the implications when women are leaving the labor force, to take another example, in record numbers. We're back to the labor force participation rates of the late 1980s. So that is the consequence of the pandemic that we've all been living through. But it's also, sort of the chance going forward to actually really begin to address these issues. In the Biden administration, as you said, at the council, I spend much of my time working on these major pieces of legislation that we are trying to pass. Obviously, that goes way beyond the council. Really, that's obviously the focus of many people in the administration. But I think that where we go from here is sort of as I said, the recognition of what these longstanding barriers have been, and really an understanding that in order to address economic relief and economic recovery, we've got to address those barriers. And we can talk more, and I know we will, about the specifics of what that means, but I think sort of that's the moment we're in. And I really do, optimism seems like a strange word to use these days, but I am at least optimistic that we will make progress because of how dire the situation has been.
It is interesting to me how what some of us knew already, both as working mothers and as in the work that we've done over the decades, how important childcare is. And if there is a silver lining, maybe one thing is that we have really amplified for the entire country how important childcare is, because of the number of women who have dropped out of the workforce because they don't have access to it, can't afford it, can't find it. And we saw that with our own workforce during the pandemic, that when we did lose people, it was because they didn't have the childcare they needed to do a job that involved supporting and caring for other families. And that is a huge challenge. So let's talk a little bit about how does the thinking around some of the administration's plans on building an equitable economic recovery, how can that help support families with young children? You know, again, both the families who participate in ParentChild Plus, but so many of the families who work for the program as well. What are the components of the American Rescue Plan, the Family Plan, and some of the other administrative initiatives that are hopefully going to make some real change for these families?
Yeah. So I think, as you said, the American Rescue Plan, which obviously has passed and is already having real impact, some of the things that are in there, either directly or indirectly related to childcare. The first very directly related was this Childcare Stabilization Fund, which was $39 billion to go to childcare providers who, as we all saw, were among the most essential of the essential workers, right? And conversely, many forced to close during the pandemic. So that's really an effort to help childcare centers literally reopen, modernize them, and really put them on a stronger footing. And then you've got the other things that just will help families very directly, the $1,400 direct payments, obviously getting shots in arms so that we can all, as we are seeing now, really get back to what, is more normal. Although I keep saying we don't want normal, we want better than normal, right? We want that truly equitable recovery that you mentioned. And another important feature of the American Rescue Plan is, of course, the child tax credit, which the president has asked for additional funding through the American Families Plan to have it last longer, because it will expire at the end of the year, as you know. But that is already having real impact for literally putting money in the pockets of children. Of families with children. And in fact, not the question you asked, but I do want to mention that we're working really hard to have people, and I think the folks who both work at ParentChild and who send their children are among the most important beneficiaries. So having people know that you don't have to file taxes to get this direct payment, and that you will get it monthly throughout the course of this year is something that we're really trying to get the message out about. To turn to child care for the moment, the American Families Plan, which, by the way, is we are working hard to try to pass at the moment. And what it would do is a number of different things. It includes universal pre-K, and it includes a number of provisions, both to make childcare more affordable for families, so that families would only spend up to 7% of their income on childcare, and ensure that all low-income families, again, particularly families of color, would be able to afford childcare for their children, particularly children under 5, where, as it is the most expensive. But also to invest in the quality of that care, and I am talking to somebody who knows better than anyone why that investment is important, right? And I have been gratified and heartened that it feels like I hear other people citing back the research about how important investing in children in their earliest days is, not only for children and for educational outcomes, but also, and health outcomes, but also for the economy. So, what you've been doing for the last however many years is working. People are finally listening. So anyway, improving the quality of childcare, and importantly, to your point, investing in the childcare, the people who provide childcare, right, who have historically been underpaid and undervalued. So one of the features of the childcare provisions of the American Rescue Plan are that childcare workers would receive a $15 minimum wage, and that also they could receive the training that they need or want, so that they could, commensurate with like kindergarten teachers and elementary school teachers. If they wanted additional training, they would be compensated for their additional skills.
That's great, and you moved right into my next question. And just for the ParentChild Plus audience, I think one of the things that Jen's touched on, which is so important, is the world of family childcare, which is a world in which we now do a fair amount of work supporting those care providers in the same way that we work one-on-one with parents, which has been the workforce that has been incredibly hard hit by the pandemic. Was very hard for a lot of those providers to stay in business. And some of these benefits are really helping them reopen. We've been seeing providers get financial influx from their states and localities that are helping them reopen. But you really hit on that issue around what we do to support women who come into the workforce without the traditional paper resume that is going to get them a high salary. So many of the women who are part of our workforce have faced systemic barriers around access to education, both because of their home language or because of the cost, because they need to work to support their family. But many of them have such powerful life experiences. They've overcome adversity. They've cared for their own and other families. They're engaged in their communities. They're community activists. And how do we bridge that gap to get them meaningful job opportunities that will pay them not only a living wage, but really a thriving wage that will enable them to support their families?
Yeah, I think there's, so much embedded in what you just said. And as you said, first and foremost, meeting people where they are, right? So just ensuring that if you are doing the job of taking care of our kids, or by the way, not so much the work you do, but so related is home and community-based care for disabled people or for elderly relatives, right? Another entire workforce where should be the most valued and historically have not. But ensuring that whatever somebody's level of education, and as you just so beautifully said, there are things that are so important to somebody being able to do their job well that don't appear on their resume, don't appear, with a degree stamped on a wall. So just ensuring the basic, which is that people who are doing these jobs are paid a decent wage, right? So ensuring that $15 minimum wage for the home and community-based healthcare workers, for the childcare workers, but then also, giving them the opportunity to get additional training. So another piece of the American Families Plan, which again, the president feels really strongly about, and by the way, the First Lady feels really, really strongly about, is community college, right? 2 years of free community college, which could also be used at a historically Black university, to get additional education in whatever field somebody is interested in, but also the certification in childcare or early learning that will actually help them get, first of all, be really helpful to them doing their job, but also giving them that, that credential so that they can make more.
I think that's great and super important. What are the things that nonprofits and employers can do working together with the administration to further some of these initiatives? I know particularly for us, it is around the issue of we're worried about retaining our workforce. There is a big demand now as we open up for retail workers and restaurant workers, and we're certainly hearing in a lot of the cities where we work that they're being paid, they're being offered salaries that are higher than most people in the caring professions have access to. And I know one of the issues that I've started to talk with some of our public funders about is this may be the moment when we need to really think about both growing our programs, because we know that coming out of the pandemic, there are so many children who suffered through the isolation and trauma of the last year and a half and really need the kinds of supports that early childhood education provides if they're going to transition successfully to school. But we also really need to take care of this workforce, and that balance of how do we grow our supports for families, but also increase salaries and benefits for our workforce is a challenging one, and probably one that the for-profit, the government, and the not-for-profit sector need to engage in together.
Yeah. Completely. I mean, one obviously big, as one of my former bosses used to say, big piece of work for this summer and beyond is to actually make that public policy change at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, right? And that's a hugely important piece. There's the voice of people who have been doing the work, the voice of people who, as I said, at the outset of this conversation, I feel like finally there's a visibility and an understanding of sort of the level of expertise that people who are doing the work that, your organization does, that people who are doing home health care, they're being respected, their voice and their history is being respected in a different way. And so I think that's, separate and apart from the work you go do every day, and far be it from me to tell somebody to take something else on at this point, because that work is plenty. But that voice in the public policy debate is incredibly important. And so I would just encourage everybody to really be vocal. Really, now is the time. As we've been talking about the pandemic, the opportunity that the pandemic presents is, that, as I keep saying, an emergency demands big structural change. My only fear, I walk around worrying perversely, that when that sort of starts to fade, which God willing it is beginning to do now and will continue to do, we might forget, right? We might forget that when we didn't have childcare, we couldn't go to work and women left the labor force, right? And it's, already going to take 2 years to recover economically, at least. But if it gives us anything, it gives us the opportunity to make these long overdue changes, which the people you work with have known for a long time are the exact changes this country needs to make. And we didn't even talk about paid leave, but that's another example, which is that we're literally one of, I think we're down to 2 countries in the world that has no paid family or medical leave of any kind. Again, now is the time. If we don't do it now, I don't know when we do it. And it's, if we didn't know a year and a half ago how important it is to take a paid sick day or to get family leave to take care of yourself or an elderly or any age relative, or to take care of a new child, we know it now.
Well, I hope that we know it now.
I hope that we know it now.
The message is absolutely right. We want to get past the pandemic. We want people to no longer be talking only on Zoom, but start to talk to each other in person. But we also don't want to forget these really important lessons that we've learned. And we don't want to take the spotlight off the caregiving workforce and how important they were to getting us through this challenge, but how even more important they can be to helping us to grow and thrive and get to that new normal that you so optimistically said will be our next place. So I can guarantee you that you all will be seeing ParentChild Plus folks in Washington, either via Zoom for now or in person, but continuing to carry that message forward. So Jen Klein, thank you so much for talking with me today. And we look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for today, but also even more importantly, for all the work you do every other day.
We hope you enjoyed that inspiring conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to another member of the ParentChild Plus team. Marcella Taylor, our new Washington program manager, is a ParentChild Plus parent graduate with a fierce passion to empower other parents to become their children's first and most important teachers. Tonight, we honor her story and her journey, and it is my great pleasure to get to talk with her. So, Marcella, you know that one of my favorite things about your story is the fact that you and your daughter were ParentChild Plus participants 16 plus years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the program and how it impacted you?
Okay. So one of our neighbors works for Atlantic Street Center, who was the agency offering the ParentChild. It was ParentChild Home program then, but was offering the program. And she noticed that there were things that her dad and I were doing with our daughter, Taylor Corrine, that kind of fit, that aligned really well with the program. And so she talked to me about it, and her dad, Taylor Corrine's dad, and I discussed it, and we decided, well, why not? You know, we want, like most parents, we want what's best for our daughter. We wanted her to have a strong foundation. And so we just said yes. And of course, there was the, you know, extra incentive of the books and toys that she was going to get. So
at what point during the program did you start to notice changes in Taylor Corrine? And what was it about your work with the early learning specialist that you think made those things happen?
Okay. First of all, our early learning specialist was really friendly. She looked like us, so we had a shared culture and shared lived experiences that just were important for us as a family, because we wanted, if you're going to welcome somebody into your home, you want that person to understand who you are. She was great. She modeled for us. There was no direct teaching. So, you know, we were confident in the fact that we were not going to be told that we were bad parents. She was very gracious, and Taylor Corrine was just excited for the days of the week that she would come. And so eventually, so at that time, Taylor Corrine is 2, so Dora was a big thing for her. And eventually, Taylor Corrine started turning the TV off more and bringing books for me to read. In particular, she had her favorite book was Please Baby Please by Spike Lee and his wife, Tanya Lewis Lee. But I noticed that eventually she didn't even want to watch TV. She wanted to sit with us and read, or she wanted to, you know, to play with her toys. And our early learning specialist reinforced that we were her parents. I'm her parent. She's learning from us all the time. And she taught us about teachable moments, little moments that we could really use to kind of sneak in little things to help Taylor Corrine learn.
And now's your chance to brag. That was 16 years ago. And what is Taylor Corrine doing now?
Oh, my favorite subject. I'm so proud of her. So she's getting ready to go into her second year at the University of Southern California at USC. First year was from her bedroom, so she's excited to actually be on campus. She plans to major in African American Studies with a minor in philosophy, politics, and law, with the ultimate goal of becoming a civil rights attorney.
We can't wait to continue watching her on her journey. It's so exciting. So now tell us about your journey. After you finished participating in the program as a parent, what changes did you see in yourself, and what did that make you think about what you wanted to do next?
Okay. First of all, just being part of the program instilled in me a confidence in my ability to parent my daughter. It instilled in me this ability and the realization that I'm and her father, that we are her best advocates. So we could explain to teachers how she was going to learn. So I would say that was a big part of it. I wanted to be able to stay home with our daughter, so I was able to do that until she went into kindergarten. And the agency that I work for, Atlantic Street Center, every year after we ended the program, they would say, "Are you ready to come work for us?" And I said, "No, I just want to stay home." So by the time Taylor Corrine got to kindergarten, I was ready to go back into the workforce. So ParentChild Plus opened up new doors for me. It let me experience a different career path, something that I would probably never have considered. And I just started off part-time as an early learning specialist, and then moved up to full-time, and then went to coordinator, and now I'm ParentChild Plus program manager for Washington State.
Oh, that's a pretty amazing journey. We're going to dig into that a little more, but I want to go back to one of the first things you said about the impact of the program on you, because I think it's such an important message about the work that we do, which is that it prepared you, it armed you to be your daughter's academic advocate and to advocate for her throughout school. And I often think that that's one of the most important things the program does. You know, I think people think, oh, the home visitor comes and they read books and play with toys and they're getting that child ready for school. But really what you're doing is getting the parent ready for school and to navigate school with and for their child. So now, as you started to support families, how did you bring that to them in your work with them?
I think the most important thing was to be able to have a conversation with families who I was asking to give us their not only their information, but to allow us into their space, right? I mean, that's a vulnerable position if you think about it. You're saying, come into my space. And for a lot of Black and brown families, like we are, there's also some other things that are attached to it. There's a general distrust of agencies coming in, like, what are you going to do with our information? Why do you want this information? So I have firsthand knowledge, so I can tell families about my experience. We can have open, honest conversation about what they expect from the program, and also just kind of give them a lay of the land and say, if there's anything that you're ever uncomfortable with, let's talk about it. But the most important thing here is you chose us. This is not a mandated program. You chose us, and you chose us for a reason. So we're simply a tool in your toolkit. And I get to explain that from not just working in the program. I get to explain that from being a parent in the program.
And talk a little bit about some of that support and resources that you're able to provide parents that really go beyond the support around helping them get their child ready for school.
Okay. So when I worked at Atlantic Street Center had wraparound services. So there was a situation where we realized that there was a mom who was experiencing depression. And so we were able, just through the rapport that we had built, the relationship that we had built, to have the conversation and to say, well, if ever you want to talk to somebody, we have resources for that. So we were able to refer her to our behavioral health department. And just in general, especially during COVID, there was such a need. All the needs were heightened. And so, we were able to provide things like diapers. We were able to provide food. We were able to provide rental assistance, all these things that were vital to the parent and the family's well-being. We were able to help connect families to those resources.
Thank you. That was great. And I think there's one thing that everything you just said centers around, which we usually say all the time we talk about the program. I don't think we've said it yet this hour, which is ParentChild Plus home visitors do 92 home visits with families. So that trust relationship that Marcella is talking about is critical, and it's built through that frequent, regular contact. To conclude on that, the past year and a half has been incredibly difficult for families, as you just referenced. Talk a little bit more about what you're seeing on the front lines and how you think that relationship that you and the early learning specialists that you were working with at Atlantic Street, how did that enable you to support families in the last year and a half?
Okay. Again, I can't reiterate enough, like you mentioned, they're just the relationship building and that trust that you're able to build with families. And so if you think about it, it really takes a lot for some people to ask for help. And so it was creating a space where families felt comfortable to ask for help. And then also recognizing that families are in this, that they're in it. So they wanted consistency. We have some families who are unstably housed. And throughout it all, despite not having, a place to lay down every night, or a stable housing situation, families were committed to the program. We had 3 families who were unstably housed who never missed a visit. I mean, that's dedication. And they talked about how they understood that their children needed routine and that they needed consistency. And they made sure as parents that happened.
And that's dedication by them. It's also dedication by you and the staff that was working with them. To close, I'd love for you to sum up in one sentence or more what it is that has kept you attached to this program for 16 plus years now.
I think my motivation is my daughter, Taylor Corrine. For everything I do as far as early education, I kind of run through the filter of what she had. And I know that it's possible for children to have the start that she had. And if I know nothing about home visitation programs like ParentChild Plus, it's that they have the possibility, there's the ability for them to change lives because they changed ours.
Thank you, Marcella, for sharing your story. It's my honor to get to talk to you, and I am so grateful for your words and your work, as is the whole ParentChild Plus community. So looking forward to all the work we're going to do in Washington State together.
Thank you so much.
So thank you all for joining us for putting care front and center, especially those of you tuning in from home. If you missed any part of the program today, you can watch any or all of it on our YouTube page. We'll also be sending out a link for you to share with others who might be interested. And if you'd like to stay in contact with ParentChild Plus, please sign up through our website, parentchildplus.org. Your donations are critical to keeping our work moving forward, to keeping all of the wonderful work you've just heard about for the last hour happening, and enabling us to innovate based on everything that we have learned this year about virtual work and what critical support it can provide for families. We need your support so that we can support more families, hire more incredible home visiting staff, and expand into more communities. We are very excited to announce tonight that we are launching a challenge grant from our board of directors. They will be matching all donations received between now and the end of September up to $85,000. So please support us and enable us to draw down that full match. You can donate on our website, parentchildplus.org, or you can donate right now as you watch our concluding musical performance by texting the word families to 76278, 76278, and making a donation. Your support allows our work to continue, empowering more parents with the tools and knowledge to support their young children on the pathway to success, just as Marcella and Taylor Kareen's father did. Thank you so very, very much for your support. We look forward to seeing you at our next event, maybe even in person. And now, the perfect performance to end this event, a mother-daughter duet by Janelle Robinson and Alita Moses. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Alita Moses.
And I'm Janelle Robinson.
And this is my mom. We wanted to say thank you so much to ParentChild Plus for having us. We are thrilled to be a part of this special event in honor and to support your work in helping young families who are truly in need right now.
Together, we hope that we can give those families equal opportunities from the start. Tonight, we are performing an ultimate classic, one that speaks to community, unity, and overcoming any obstacles life presents.
We hope you enjoy Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
What you gotta say, Alita?
A little something. Listen, baby, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby.
If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far, baby. Just call my name, I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry, 'cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe.
Remember the day I set you free, I told you you could always count on me, darling. From that day on, I made a vow, I'll be there when you want me, some way, somehow, yeah.
Oh baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe.
Oh, no, darling.
No wind, no rain, or winter's cold can stop me, baby.
No, baby.
'Cause you are my goal.
I'll be there on the double. Just send for me.
Oh, baby. My love is alive, way down in my heart, although we are miles apart.
If you ever need a helping hand, I'll be there on the double, just as fast as I can.
Don't you know that there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you. Don't you know that there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough, ain't no mountain high enough. ain't no mountain high enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight.